Good morning, everybody. My name's Iain Pendry. I'm one of the few manufacturing engineers in the room, so I hope you won't hold that against me. So I want to talk to you a little bit about zero defects and the zero defects movement. But before we start that, I think we're just going to show a little video here. Some of you may have seen this before. If you've been working for Rolls-Royce for any length of time, you will have seen this video probably hundreds of times, but we'll play it and see how we go. What's really important to take away from this video is I guess the leader itself, the first person who stands up and does that. It's a really, really difficult thing to do. I don't necessarily want to use the phrase lone nut, but somebody's got to take that first step in the organisation, and something's got to happen to make that to make that happen. We can talk about John Cotter, we can talk about cultural change models, we can talk about the first thing that happens, but there's got to be an incentive for change within the business. And I think that happened in Rolls-Royce. We had a particular operations executive. I'm not going to name him. His first name is Mike. He came back from one of our customers in 2016, and I think he had a pleasant conversation with that customer, but maybe that customer expressed some dissatisfaction in some of our quality performance. And that led that person to come back into the organisation and to say at Rolls-Royce we were going to do things very differently. We'd already participated in the AESQ for probably 4 years by that point. So it was natural then to start to think about, okay, how do we take that learning, how do we take that tools, and how do we cook it into a movement that really, really turbocharges our direction on quality. So we wanted to do that. So Mike came back and he talked to us and he said, okay, you've got to start thinking about how you create a movement, how we start to talk about zero defects. And I think one of the first big challenges that we have when we talk about zero defects is pretty much exactly what Chris said. Everybody just says zero defects, that's not actually possible. You know, our products are too complicated. They're too difficult to manufacture, the materials are too esoteric, our designs are so demanding that it's not actually possible to do that. So that's kind of the first thing that we need to put out of the way, is to start to think about, well, how do we bust some of those myths? How do we actually put evidence in that this is really possible to do that? The second thing to think about in this video is the first follower. That first guy who stands up and says, yeah, I believe this, I'm going to go away and do this. Now, there's a level of danger there, isn't there? There's a level of ridicule. You could be the only person who stands up and follows. So there's a level of bravery in order to do that. And that's something I want us to think about, is our behaviours around this. Because if we're really going to be successful in driving this kind of change, we have to be that first follower, and we have to take a little bit of bravery and a bit of a brave pill on this, and really join in and go in with both feet. We'll move on. So what's actually kind of stopping us in terms of zero defects? What are the kind of things? Now, we did a nice little survey. A good chunk of people in the room were kind of really confident about zero defects and about their journey. Quite a lot of people weren't so confident about that. So what's actually kind of stopping us? What are the kind of things that people are going to play back to us when we start to challenge on zero defects? So what's stopping us? Faced with change. Three kind of questions. Question number one, why are you doing this? It's actually probably a different question. A lot of people are probably asking, do I have to do this? Well, yeah, there's pretty much a financial imperative to do it. Chris has said that, Eric has said that. This customer satisfaction. It's just not acceptable anymore that we're shipping products, and we're shipping products that aren't a zero defect standard. Second one, can I cope? Do I have the tools to be able to do this? Do I know how to implement zero defects? What does it actually mean to be able to do that? And as you can see, if you look around us, you look all the way down the side of the room over there, we've got the subject matter interest groups, we've got the standards, and we'll come back to this in a little bit. There is a wealth of information that tells us how to do this. And there's a lot of evidence that says that we can do this. What's in it for me? It's a lot of job satisfaction. It's the satisfaction of a job well done. And it's not having to go back and do this time again. This week, it's working again now, that's good. So time and time again. So what are we going to take away from this? So what does it mean? So time for a Slido. Don't pick up your phones. What I'd like you to do is we're just going to take a couple of minutes. Should we do a swap? Does this one work? Yeah, that one's even better. Take a couple of minutes at your tables, please. Talk amongst yourselves for a couple of minutes and just answer the question. What reasons do you think people within organisations give for not achieving zero defects? So talk about yourselves for a couple of minutes, and then somebody in the table grab your phones and then just start to type the answers into Slido, and we'll see them appear on here. Then we'll kind of talk through them. So I'll probably come back to some of the tables, and we'll just have a little bit of feedback as to what you think the real problems and challenges are. So a couple of minutes from now, off you go. Cost is a big problem, certainly. We're thinking cost is an issue. The resources and not having enough resources to do this properly seems to be a big issue. Lack of training. Too fancy to be realistic. That's a really good one, isn't it? Yeah. It's just all too hard to do. We don't want to do it. So I'm going to go to a couple of tables if you can and just get some feedback. So before I pick on someone, and I will say I am quite short-sighted, so I will be picking on someone who's got a bright jacket on. Anybody want to give us some feedback on this? Give us some views as to what you think's driving this in your company? I was going to say, anybody want to do that out loud? Gentleman over the back there, thank you.
Yeah, so one thing I think is people thinking this is the way we've always done it.
Mm-hmm. Certainly a challenge, isn't it? It's breaking that status quo. If you've been working in a certain way for a long period of time, then having that bravery to change and do something different and adopt a new way of working is really, really challenging. It takes a brave, visionary person to be able to do that and to break away from that. So you're absolutely right, yeah. Any more? Gentleman over there on the table in the back corner. Thank you, sir.
I think one of the biggest challenges, at least from where we stand, is flow down requirements. We are at the very bottom of that flow down chain, and if it's flowed from the top to the bottom, at some point we deal with it daily. The flow down is either incorrect or missing.
Yeah, it's a big challenge. I mean, I think going back probably 10 or 12 years, Rolls-Royce had the Sabre requirements, Sabre 2, which was just about coming in when I first started working for Rolls-Royce, was something like 80 or 90 pages, a hugely complicated document that had Rolls-Royce's spin on virtually every part of the quality management and supply management process. Now, let's fast forward to 2024, Sabre 4. Sabre 4, I think, is 20 pages. And virtually every element of Sabre 4 says refer to one of the standard AESQ documents. So really a massive sea change in terms of how Rolls-Royce tries to flow those documents down. You're absolutely right, it's a really complex area to do, but it's something that we really try and push forward on. I will go forward if I may. So let's have a look. Any of these come up on there? It isn't in my budget. You're 2 years ahead of your time. It can't be done. It's too much trouble. So costs too much. We're good enough already. Our systems are different. So we've seen all of these kind of things coming out. These are really, really universal reasons that we've got within our businesses to not do this. I want to try and tackle some of what I think are the common reasons, and certainly what came out in Rolls-Royce around why we would struggle to do this, why we would not want to do this. And the first thing is, I don't have the people to support APQP. It was the biggest thing that came out in the Slido, if you remember, this big challenge on resources. Yeah, I'd like to give you a glib and straightforward answer to be able to do this. But the fact remains, if you are going to do APQP, you are going to have to put some work in up front. And actually, I don't think that that's something we should be shying away from. Our leaders have to understand that. So part of this is training our leaders. Part of this is having that visionary person at the front and being able to say, yeah, we are going to have to do this, but we have to have faith that this process works. And that's kind of a a nice little segue on to the second one on this, which is to say APQP doesn't help make better hardware. I'll just let that rest for a minute. That's effectively saying APQP doesn't work. And I think that's the biggest fallacy in the whole of this structure, is that the APQP doesn't help make better parts. So I'm not a lifer within Rolls-Royce. I've kind of had 50% of my career in automotive first tier, and I've had 50% of my career with Rolls-Royce. So looking back, probably the first car that I had when I was a youngster, 1990, it seems like a long time ago now, I bought a car called a Mini Metro. Now, most of you in the room will not have heard of a Mini Metro, and those of you in the room who have heard of a Mini Metro will be laughing now, because it was a terrible car. It's a terrible car. It came with a 1-litre engine and generated 43 horsepower, which didn't seem a lot in 1980 or 1990 when I had it. It's not a lot now. It was awful. So I had that car in 1990. It was 10 years old at that point. Virtually everything went wrong with that car. And by the time I sold it 4 years later, there was not much in front of the firewall that was not original. Fast forward to 5 years ago, my daughter turned 17 and she wanted a car. 17 is the legal age that you can drive in the UK. And because I'm a good dad, I said, yeah, of course, I'll buy you a car. I wasn't that good a dad because I bought her a 10-year-old car. It was a Hyundai i20. Had a 3-cylinder engine. And in the 5 years that she's had that car now, I have spent nothing on that car at all, other than just to get it through its annual inspections. The level of reliability in terms of automotive development over the past 30, 40 years, and a lot of this has been driven by APQP, is fearsome. You know, that car now, a modern car, is not going to break down, it's not going to go wrong, it's not going to cost you a lot to fix it, and a lot of that is because APQP and all of these quality systems that we're now adopting in aerospace are absolutely proven to work. So the fact that we say APQP doesn't make better hardware is just rubbish. Now, certainly within Rolls-Royce, we've been on a journey. Over the last 3, 4, 5 years, we've been able to really turn the screw on how we use these tools, how we use these fantastic tool set that we've got. We are really starting to see now some great examples of incredibly complex structures within our engines, certainly new engines, that we are being able to produce to 0 defect levels. We've gone through that whole journey of people saying, I don't believe this, why do you want to do 0 defects, I don't understand it, we can't do 0 defects. And it's taken us quite a long time, I think, as a business to get through and to try and embed that culture within the business, but we are really getting there now. And the results are, in my opinion, absolutely staggering. As an industry, we don't have a lot of those examples that we can kind of share around, and I think it's really important to have forums like this where we can share those kind of examples. I will direct you to Carl and Earl tomorrow are going to talk about this and talk about the impact of APQP. And I really encourage you to have a listen to that, because Carl's going to talk about some of the great examples and some of the evidence that we can use to kind of drive people's thinking in this area, because it's really, really important. It costs too much. Yeah, again, it doesn't actually cost too much. It costs money at a point of time within the life cycle where we don't normally want to spend it, which is right up at the front. Now, if you look at the whole life cycle costs of doing APQP, yeah, you've got to spend some time, you've got to invest some money up the front, but the payback on doing that is tremendous. You don't then have to deal with poor quality, high concession rates, yield, customer dissatisfaction, all the way through the life cycle. So it's so important to be able to do this. Last one, we're good enough already. We're really not. There's always room for improvement. There's always things that we can take away from this and to improve. So a lot of work to be able to go at there. Again, how do we sell this to people? How do we get to think about the benefits of doing this? So if you look at 0 defect thinking, typically, okay, what do? we've got a process here. We're systematically understanding what can go wrong. We're using tools like PFMEA to think about that. We're documenting how we control processes, and we're managing that process in a way that gives us feedback, and we're doing a continuous improvement cycle. So, okay, that seems relatively sensible. How have we traditionally done it? Well, we've waited for something to go wrong, and that's great. Then we see why it happened, and we try and fix it. But a lot of the time we don't actually fix it because we're really clever. So the first time that we do that fix, we don't get to root cause, and then we go around the whole thing again. Now, the question for me is which one of these approaches is probably going to give us the best outcome? I mean, it's pretty obvious when we think about it, isn't it? So let's try and think about how we do that zero defects, and let's try and harness that in our thinking. We talk about, again, within Rolls-Royce, how we embedded this within our business and what the learning was. And we all started off at the start of the change curve up here, and we were really optimistic. Yeah, it seems like a good set of tools. We can actually do this. Now, that very quickly turns into, actually, this is quite hard to do. This takes quite a long time, and some of these tools are quite complicated. And how are we going to do this? And I think there's two things that I would say from Rolls-Royce's learning on this. And the first one is it's about really creating an atmosphere where people can play at this successfully, where people can think about the level of personal jeopardy and the level of fear in terms of what they're doing. If we go back to the first slide on here, we talked about the reasons not to do this and the reasons not to do change. And a lot of it is around our fear of that. And as leaders, we need to kind of recognise that. And we need to create that area of psychological safety where people can work in an area. They can go through the bottom of this curve here. They can deal with the pessimism, where they're not afraid to fail. We give people space, we give people support, we give people encouragement, and we really reward that kind of level of persistence. And eventually we'll start to see hope, a level of hope on there. We'll turn out of that bathtub curve at the bottom, and people will start to see those successes. But it is absolutely, it's absolutely key that us as leaders provide that level of kind of coaching and provide that level of support to allow people to do that. Brings me on to the next one. So everybody in this room can be a change agent to enable zero defects. We're all here. Hopefully we all believe that this is possible. Hopefully we'll see examples and we'll see ways of doing that. But it's really, really, really important that we realise why people are going to struggle on this journey, and that we really get behind and support and coach and mentor and provide that kind of leadership. And that's been absolutely vital within Rolls-Royce in terms of trying to do this. We've not always got it right. We've not always hit the target the first time. But it's incredibly important, I think, that we've been able to recognise people's efforts and to reward people for success and to celebrate that success, both within our external supply chain and within our domestic factories. But we really got to think about, as leaders in this space, it is our role to help support and to coach people through what is a daunting process. It is a complex and daunting process. What are the kind of enablers for how we do this? And the first one on here that I'm going to just talk about, I think, is bias for action. So what does that mean? I borrowed that phrase quite liberally from a Goodrich, what's now Goodrich Collins lean training. Bias for action just means actually starting on the journey. It just means we're going to go at this with action. And I would say that one of the key enablers for success within Rolls-Royce is actually just we started doing it. We started learning through doing. We started small. We encouraged our teams. And we just got on that journey. And it's so important. You're never going to get to a destination unless you actually take the first step and start. It's a really, really key thing to do. Collaboration and shared learning on this. Now, you can see on the top of this, there's a lot of information there about what the AESQ and the various standards can help us to do that. So we've got a fantastic set of standards now that tell us how to do this. We don't have to invent this as we go along. All of the information that we need, the toolkit that we need to do is there, and it's available largely for free to help us to figure out how we do this. We've got a fantastic set of reference manuals and resources that are there provided free, that are written by some of the key industry experts in these areas. So all this learning is there to provide us for free. It's not guesswork. We don't have to figure out this for ourselves. We've got a whole raft of separate training, and I think I'll just pause there for a second, because I think one of the key differentiators when Rolls-Royce started this journey in 2017 was that we made a massive investment in training. I'm sure there'll be people in the room now that can remember having Ian Riggs coming around and talking to you about a 3-day training course on all of these tools and what it means to do zero defects. The vast majority of the senior leadership within Rolls-Royce went through that training, and that training was kind of cascaded down. So it built a language, it built a common understanding of the tools that we had throughout the whole business. And I would say probably in Rolls-Royce over the last 7 or 8 years, there's been 2 really outstanding kind of cultural changes that have happened within the business. And zero defects was one of them. Everybody in Rolls-Royce felt this was possible. Everybody in Rolls-Royce had a good grasp of the basics, and I think it's a massive enabler. But there's so much information that the AESQ can provide to you that enables and really accelerates that journey within your businesses. So please, if you're here for a couple of days, make the very, very best use of the experts that are in the room and sat around the edges of the room in the subject matter interest groups, because these guys really deeply understand how to do this. And it's, we're all very, very happy to share the journeys, to share the lessons and to share the failures. So please take the opportunity to kind of do that. On top of that, communities of practice are available. A great number of community of practices, particularly on LinkedIn, that all of us can join, all of us can contribute to, and all of us can ask questions. So if we get to a point where we need some help, we are absolutely not alone on this journey. There's a whole community of people who will help and support as we go through this. The final sort of points that I want to try and make around this, and I think we're probably doing okay for time, aren't we? This is not a solo action. This is not just one team within our business that has to do this. And you can kind of see, some of the characters, some of the people that we've got within our businesses who can help support what we do. This is not just a quality engineering task to do this. Every part of the business needs to go on the journey and be taken on the journey in order to help us to be able to do this. There's a whole range of people who will help us to do this. There's a whole flow of information that goes through the businesses, and you can see that it's not just one person. So if we're thinking about how we deploy this, and certainly how we deployed it in Rolls, making sure that we had a wide range of people to be able to do this is what we needed to do. So how does this all go? What's that look like? Well, we've got to have designers on the pitch. We've got to be thinking about a customer as the most important person here, because we've got to satisfy that. We've got to have designers, MEs working hand in hand together. We've got to think about the operations side of this and the operators within our business. Inspectors, logistics, there's a whole flow there that we need to think about. But underneath that, a whole supporting cast of people. And if we don't consider those, if we don't consider the whole organisation when we're trying to roll this out, we will fail. These slides, incidentally, are taken from a game that we ran within Rolls-Royce, and it was trying to get whole organisations and whole teams together to then be thinking about, well, okay, what is my role in this? So, I'm working in finance. My role in zero defects, is that necessarily clear to me? So part of the game that we generated and the simulation that we played was helping the whole team to understand that they had an intrinsic part within zero defects, and what did they need to do to be able to support that. Same for HR, same for purchasing. Some of the roles in here that we've got are really, really obvious, but some of them are more subtle. So it's a great opportunity to do that. We are really happy to share that game with you and to give that to you, and then you can You can take that away. I think we've got some more slides as well that we can circulate, which has got a little bit more detail, because the whole game that we had had not only what those key roles are there to do, but also the overlay of the individual tools and how people use all of the tools that we've talked about in order to overlay that. So that might be a useful resource for you to think about. And as we're going on, working together, do you have all these roles in your company? What happens if you don't have all of the roles there? Is it okay for somebody to wear 2 hats? How do you make up in your business for any shortcomings or the absence of particular roles? How do we make sure that actually these roles are able to communicate correctly and to integrate together? Because integration with this, and again, going back to some of the experiences in Rolls-Royce, being able to connect functions together, being able to get people to talk, being able to understand different viewpoints around a design engineer, a manufacturing engineer, an operations person, how these teams come together to achieve 0 defects has been probably one of the biggest challenges that we've overcome, but it's been one of the biggest benefits that we've seen as well. We don't always agree. Getting a design engineer to agree with a manufacturing engineer on what's possible, it's a journey, and it's a discussion that we have to make all the time. But the benefit that we've seen within Rolls-Royce on being able to get to very, very high levels of quality on some incredibly complex and technical parts within the engine has only been achieved by getting people together, getting people to talk it over, getting people to see a different perspective and a different point of view, and then getting us to come together with one common purpose. So thinking about how we work together and thinking about breaking those organisational barriers has been one of the kind of key things that we need to do. So I think I'm just about out of time. Really, really appreciate your time and the ability to come along and talk to you about this. So I'll leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.